When you are analyzing the ratios, you have to understand what is the basis of comparison, because that will influence your choice of words. You don't just say things. What is the basis of comparison? What the heck do I mean by that? Basis of comparison means, are we dealing with the same entity year on year? Are we dealing with the same entity year on year? Or we are dealing with the entity and industry average, or competitors, or a competitor or proxy firm? So these are the two bases of comparison we can have in the exam hall. Either it is the same entity year on year. In other words, you are comparing maybe 20x5 to 20x6. Or it is the entity with industry average or another company. Why is this important? Because your choice of words has to be very crucial here. Now, if you are comparing the entity with an industry average, then you have to use words like, oh, it is higher or lower. It is greater or less than. It is it is higher or greater, lower, it is greater or less than. You have to use those words. Note, when you are comparing two companies, you cannot use the following. Do not use any of the following. Number one, it is rising or falling. What is rising? Is it mango or sunshine? Rising or falling? Increasing or decreasing? You are forbidden from saying this if it is a company and industry average. You can't say the ratio is rising, because what is rising? How can you compare Nanekia to Josephine and say that Josephine is rising and Nanekia is falling? You can't say that. But you can say, okay, Josephine is higher, Nanekia is lower, or Nanekia is higher, greater, and Josephine is less than. So that kind of thing. So you cannot say rising and falling, increasing or decreasing. Do you understand? You don't know, you write some English and it is about another company and you bring these things inside there, you see what I'll do to you. So that is the first thing I want you to understand. So when you are comparing a company,
intimidation.
oh, look at you. When you're comparing a company with another company or industry average, your places or your ground should be, oh, it is higher than this, or the company's own is lower than the industry average, or the company's own is greater than the company or the industry average, or the company's own is less than the industry average. You can do that. Don't say rising and falling. It's not sunshine or mango. Don't say increasing or decreasing. Nothing is increasing or decreasing. But if it is the same entity, that one there, it's a free stock. You can do higher, lower, rising and falling. Nobody will catch you. Sounds good? That one you can use whatever you want to use and you'll be good. You'll be good. So you can say rising and falling, increasing and decreasing, greater than this year or greater than last year, higher than last year's figure, and you'll be okay. This is the basis of comparison and your choice of words. The reason why I drew back to explain this to you is because I am going to get into the interpretation in a moment, and I'm going to be using these words and contextualizing them. And so you have to know when to do what, so that you don't get it clouded that, oh, I can use whatever word I like. It depends on the context or the basis of comparison. Sounds good? Any questions, you raise your hand, we bring you up, or you put it in the chat for me. Yes, James, your hand is up.
Sir, we from the introduction, you may mention the financial performance, and we know the ratios that are there for the financial performance. So let's say that if I'm using the choice of word in the industry average, am I using the higher for the financial ratio or the performance or
No,
specific
what
ratio?
I mean by choice of
Like,
words, it's let's say
sir,
that you calculate asset turnover and we have our entity. So let's say YPLC, and then we have the industry average like this. So YPLC, the asset turnover is 4 times. The industry average is 9.2 times. So how do you interpret this? You don't say, oh, the asset turnover is rising. You are wrong. You don't say asset turnover has increased. You are wrong. But what would you say? You would say that YPLC's asset turnover is lower than the industry average, or the industry average has, or the industry has a higher asset turnover than YPLC. That's what we are trying to say here. So whatever ratio you are dealing with, as far as you are comparing the company and the industry average, higher, lower, greater, less is what will be used. But if it is the same entity, that's where you can use whatever words, including rising and falling, like a sunshine and mango.
Sir, my issue is that I know that asset turnover is part of profitability ratio. And in calculating that one also, I know that it affects financial performance of the entity. So instead of me not picking maybe asset turnover when the ratio are all moving or the figures are tailing towards a certain pattern. Let's say they are all rising, and I want to block the ratio to make the assessment. That's what I'm saying. Am I going to use the profitability, like let's say the profitability, both of the ratio indicate a positive direction for me. So am I picking it as the profitability ratio is higher, or the financial performance in that particular year is higher than that is, or must I necessarily pick each of the ratios? Because even though maybe the ratios are giving me a similar figure.
Now, the fact that all the ratios may be heading towards a certain direction does not mean when you are doing the interpretation, you will pick just the financial performance and talk about financial performance. No, that will be in your conclusion paragraph when you're talking about the overall performance. But if you're assessing the performance, you still have to talk about the ratios individually. So in your conclusion paragraph, when you're talking about the overall performance, fine, you can state that. But as far as you are interpreting the ratios, even though they are all heading towards the same direction, like you mentioned, you would have to take them still one after the other and give us detail, because you are analyzing, not giving overview. That's the issue. So you have to talk about them independently, but your statement will be in the conclusion paragraph where you are talking about the overall performance of the company. Are you okay with that? Did that make sense to you? Any other questions, please? Raise your hand, we'll bring you up, or you put it in the chat for me. So that is the basis of comparison. That is the basis of comparison that you need to be aware of. So choice of words, you choose, and we will see how you're going to do that. Now, then finally, you would have to find out the way the question is structured. Sometimes the examiner may say, write a report or write a memo or just analyze the financial statements. Professionalism or professional presentation requires that you answer the question in the manner it has to be in. So if the examiner says, write a report to somebody or write a memo to somebody, the format is different from writing just analyzing, or just the question says, analyze the performance of the company. So if it is a report or a memo, you know how to write a report already. To whom are we writing? From whom? Definitely you are maybe a financial analyst. The examiner will tell you who you are in the question. But if it doesn't tell you anything, you can call yourself a financial analyst, or you can call yourself an ICAG final level student, something like that. So sometimes the examiner will tell you who you are. Other time he will not tell you. So if it doesn't tell you financial analyst or ICAG final level student, then you go to the subject. What the heck are you writing about? The subject will be what you are writing about. So analysis of the financial performance and position, depending on the question, but analysis of the financial performance and the financial position of the entity, okay? Of the entity, you name the entity and then you go away. Then date. The examiner may tell you the date you're supposed to prepare the analysis for. So you put the dates down. If there is no date, it will be prudent for you to use any period after the reporting date. Okay, so you can use any period after the reporting date. Remember, professionalism is important. The examiner is going to mark all these. So any period means that if the year ended is 31st December, say 2021, then definitely you will be writing the analysis anywhere after 31st December 2021. So you may choose a date and say maybe 14 February 2022. That's when you were writing the report on the Valentine Day. You're writing the report. So the date should always be any period after the reporting date. Any period after the reporting date.
Can you choose the date that you are writing the exam?
Yeah, sometimes it can work. Yeah, it can work. The date on which you are writing the exam, because always the question is a little bit behind the date you are writing the exam. So definitely you can choose the date you are writing the exams and you'll be good. So to, from, subject, date. Then you come to introduction. Please, you write it down, introduction. Now, your introduction, what should it cover? It should briefly explain, your introduction should briefly explain the purpose of the report, the ratios that you are using, and that is going to be their category, not giving us a list, the category. So if it is profitability ratios and liquidity ratios, write it down. Then number 3, the basis of comparison. So maybe you are comparing year on year, fine. Or you are comparing the entity with industry average, fine. Or you are comparing the entity with another company, put it down. Put it down. So the purpose of your report, the ratios that we are using, the basis of comparison, and certainly the year ended. Sometimes the examiner may say that talk about other issues. If there is any other requirements in the question that they say you should talk about, that should clearly be communicated in your introduction. Please, it is introduction, not essay. That is why I use the word briefly explain. Briefly explain. It is introduction, not essay. So we can say that this report is the analysis of the financial performance and financial position using profitability and liquidity ratio for the year ended 31st December, comparing with the year ended 31st December 20 something. Something like that, brief. This report is an analysis of the financial performance and position of the above company using profitability and liquidity ratios, comparing the current year financial statement with the previous year, or comparing the financial statement of the entity with the industry average for the year ended under review. Something like that. You don't have to write my words, but just something like that. That's your introduction. Write the word introduction and write, it's a report. Professionalism. This all is part of the 10 marks on analysis part. So when you finish with the intro like that, you now take the ratios one after the other. Okay. Now it depends on the approach you want to go. Sometimes, depending on the question, you may want to take maybe profitability ratios and talk about the profitability ratios. After that, you may want to take maybe the liquidity ratios and talk about it. After that, you want to take the gearing ratios and talk about it. And if there is an investors ratio, you can talk about that also, if there is any. You talk about that. So every paragraph will take that. Alternatively, please stay with me carefully. Instead of writing financial or profitability ratios, you could write financial performance as a paragraph. Okay, financial performance. I can't even spell performance. Financial performance. Then under that, you will interpret or explain the profitability ratios. Then your second paragraph will be financial position, because financial position will talk about two things: the liquidity ratios and other gearing ratios. So then your third paragraph will be financial position. It's choice of words. Okay, it's choice. You can choose what you are comfortable with. So from intro, you come to the main body. This is the main body of the letter. Did I just say letter? Sorry. Of the report. This is the body of the report. So this is where you are going to use whatever word you have to use. Rising, falling, it's a mango and sunshine. Increasing, decreasing, whatever the heck that is. Higher, lower, greater, less than. You're going to do that here. Once you are through with the body, you go to the conclusion. Again, you must write it down, conclusion. So in the conclusion paragraph, you got to briefly explain the overall performance of the organization. So what is the overall performance? Based on the body, the analysis that you made, what can you say in total? So it's like in summary, in a nutshell, like the way we say, in summary, what is the performance of the organization? Then in your analysis, you are likely to identify some problems, some limitations, some challenges. So possible recommendation or suggested recommendation to improve performance. Then sometimes the examiner may ask you something specific. So if there is any other something that the examiner asks you exclusively, that will also be part of the thing there. So this will not come in every analysis, but this will be specific to the question. This will be specific to the question. So that is what happens in your conclusion paragraph. So introduction, financial performance, financial position, or profitability ratios, liquidity ratios, gearing ratios, investors ratios. Conclusion paragraph. When you are done, it's a report. So thank you. Hey. Thank you. Yours faithfully. I'm going to write yours loving. Yours loving accountant. That is if your husband is your accountant, there is your own thing. So yours faithfully. Can sign. Okay. Then you put your name up. That's it. This is how we write a report. So when the examiner takes your script under ratio analysis, and the requirement of the question was a report, the examiner will look at this first before we go to, sorry, not we, I'm not part of it. Before the examiner goes into reading the English you wrote. So what is the structure of your presentation? Do we have the to, from, subject, date? Do we see intro? Have we seen the body? Do we see conclusion? Do we see thank you, yours faithfully, sign and your name? Good. Then you score that mark. Then the examiner will now come to the English grammar that you have written down. So that is what we do if the examiner asks us to write a report or a memo. Okay, a report or a memo. But if the examiner just say analyze the financial performance or position, then there is no need for to, from, date, subject. All you will need is a heading. Okay, so in that case, what you need is just a heading here. Just need a heading. And the heading will be analysis of financial performance and financial position. But then introduction, everything else will follow in that order. But then because it's just an analysis, you end on thank you. Don't go and add yours faithfully, sign, Nana Ikia Konedu Yadom, the chief accountant of the company. No. You don't include that one. So you just stay with where you are at, and that is okay. Any questions?